You're listening to Live Wild Radio, the part-time adventure podcast.
Join us as we explore how outdoor adventures build mind, body, and spirit. Welcome to Live Wild Radio. I'm Catherine.
I'm Winston.
And we've got Dean from the Dean Douglas Show. Dean's got his own podcast. We actually met, I think it was back in the summer. We're on a mutual friend's event. Alyssa Payne, she's the founder of the Wind Journal. She had an event called Punch Fear in the Face. I spoke on it. I talked a bit about facing fear and starting this whole episode because it was a thing for me and the growth behind that. And then that's how Dean and I connected. Soon after that, we talked some more and we decided let's collaborate. And I was on his podcast. I think it was episode 18, where I talked about rebuilding my life. Aside from us sharing common interest in adventure, Dean, you're into climbing and the outdoors. I think there's a big story to be told about the adventure in life. And you've done some pretty big moves yourself. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself. What are you doing these days? What brought you to the state?
Yeah, for sure. First, thanks so much, Catherine and Winston, for having me on the podcast. And for those who haven't heard our episode where Catherine and I chat, I highly recommend you do so. I listened to it not that long ago, and it was great to listen to it a second time and picked up a lot of really great little gems and good nuggets away from that conversation. So thanks for coming on my show. But so who am I? That's a big question. So I am 32, and my wife and I recently moved from Winnipeg, Manitoba. We're both born and raised in Winnipeg, and we moved to Penticton, British Columbia, a year and I think 3 days ago. So it was January 26th of 2020 that we arrived in Penticton, and what a year it was. 2020 was just a whirlwind of a year for everyone, and it was a very strange year to be in a new city, a new part of the country, a new province. We didn't know anyone. We didn't have any family or friends here in Penticton. We had visited the Okanagan a couple of times. We just loved the lifestyle out here. And when we made the move out here, it was like the universe was kind of like just opening doors, and we were actually walking through them, and then another door would open, and it was just very fluid, and it wasn't like pushing a rock up the hill. So I think there's something there in terms of making big decisions. Maybe see how much resistance you are experiencing in that, and maybe it's just not the right time, and maybe in the near future, maybe there is another opportunity and it might not be as difficult. But I'm not afraid of pushing something up the hill if maybe the reward is really sweet. I don't know. I could kind of play both sides of the coin on that one. But yeah, so we ended up moving out here. It was very difficult for me to get a job because everyone was in a hiring freeze. And I'd always kind of wanted to start my own business and was in a position to be able to do that just with my wife being able to work. And then we just had this time where I could actually try to have my own business. So I got incorporated on June 11th. I had my first client on June 15th. And it was just great. I guess there was just opportunities that became available, and then I just put myself out there as much as possible, tried to get involved in the community as safely as possible amidst COVID. So I tried to be really open to any relationship that I was able to make, and I think it's been great. It's been a roller coaster of the last 6 or so months to try and learn how to run a business. There's been challenges for sure. But overall, it's been a great experience. And in my business, I kind of specialize in building websites. But then I can be like, I've been a couple of companies like head of marketing, and I oversee their whole marketing strategy for their company. It's been overall really well received. Just people realize because of the pandemic that if they don't have a good online presence, now is the time that really has pushed them to be like, oh yeah, okay, we should have a really good website. And if not, it's time to update or create a new one. So I think timing has a lot to do with it as well. Yeah, it's been a weird year in terms of like on the personal side of making like friendships out here. That's been challenging just because, I haven't been able to I play soccer, for example. I haven't been able to join a soccer team. I've gotten into rock climbing, shared interest of both you guys and a lot of your listeners. And that community is amazing, very supportive, welcoming, open. So out here, we're like a 10-minute drive to Skaha Bluffs, which is a provincial park, and they have world-class climbing out here. And so we did a day-long training course with like a local legend here in town, and just got to meet a couple of local climbers here, and I've gone out climbing this summer, which has been amazing. And then I joined the indoor climbing gym because we're now in winter at the time of this recording, and have been going there, try to every week, and meet some people.
Is it still open? Your indoor climbing gyms?
It is.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, ours are closed.
I mean, we had a maximum of 10 per, in an indoors. They were doing it, and so we were booking.
But
I want to ask, first of all, for our listeners from the U.S., Canadians moving from anywhere in the province to another place is a big deal. I just say that because in the U.S. people do it all the time, but in Canada people kind of stay put. So
really, they do?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I'm from the East Coast.
Yeah.
And people from the East Coast are always moving to Ontario.
Yeah, well, they have no choice. But for Ontarians or people, or especially with big economic centers, they tend to not move so much. But I think even just the mentality, right, of especially when you're at the start of your career, right, you're already established, you're starting, and then you have an opportunity to move elsewhere, pick up and go. Talk a bit about that, because that's facing fears for some people, and there was a risk associated. I know your wife had a job, you did not, and then you're like, hey, I've always wanted to start a business. Like, what did what was that like? What did you learn during that process? Like, was it as hard, or was it as bad out there as some people would kind of make it out to be, versus just going ahead and doing it?
I guess having the experience of already moving to Ontario kind of opened our eyes to see what is it like to live outside of Manitoba? What's it like to live in Southern Ontario? How do people live there? What's the climate like, environment, amenities, etc.? And so I think that just helped, having that experience, to be like, okay, you know what, we moved out there. It was overall a good experience. There's like challenging parts in that experience as well, but there was nonetheless experience, and that helped us have the confidence to be like, okay, let's go and try a different province, and I think we can do this again. I don't know, leap of faith, I guess you can look at it, but you can kind of break it down to like, what were the things that we were moving towards, or what were we going to gain? And I think one of them was like lifestyle and climate. We knew that was kind of a guarantee, and that's huge. Like, what we can do in our spare time was really important to us. And out here, it's a playground. It's unbelievable. I have like guilt sometimes with being able to like go skiing or rock climbing, or go on the lakes and go boating, or you name it, hiking, cycling. It's crazy. So the lifestyle was kind of the main big draw. And but yeah, there's definitely an element of unknown and fear in making a big change. And to put like perspective for like American listeners, like in Winnipeg, you drive like 8 hours in any direction, and like the most next big metropolis would be like Minneapolis, which is like 8 hours south. I mean, it takes like over 5.5 hours for Regina, and I know then, it's 11 hours to Calgary. So it's a bubble in the center of Canada. It's very kind of isolating in its own way. So, but I tell you, there's a lot of difference between living in BC and living in Manitoba, and keeping up with how the provinces are just communicating information regarding COVID is different. I feel like each province is kind of operating like its own country in some ways through COVID. So I feel like BC is doing an amazing job at maintaining, keeping our economy somewhat open or open safely, just balancing, I think, the mental health and physical safety of COVID. So I don't know. I also kind of just lean into fear. I think that's really important. We had talked about that on our podcast, and I think you had said on the other side of fear is what you want. And I totally agree. I think, using rock climbing as an analogy, like when you do go for that next move that you've been struggling with, and you land it, and then you keep going, like that's what you wanted. It's a really good feeling. So I think if you are afraid, I think there's things that you can do to lean into it safely and be able to overcome your fear.
I think the key thing, it's always like, oh shit, that was easier than I thought. Or I didn't realize I was as strong, that's usually what goes through my mind over and over again. And we, I try and talk about that, because I think a lot of what we're talking about on this podcast is, the outdoors and challenging yourself is just an opportunity to grow. And it always tends to be leaning into those fears.
Yeah, totally. I think a good litmus test is like, does whatever you're thinking of doing, do you have like a little bit of like discomfort? And I think that's actually, I think for the most part, I think a good kind of sign. That's kind of like your gut or intuition saying like, oh, I don't know. I think deep down, if you know what you should be doing, I think you just need to prioritize the thing that's in your head. That's really, I don't know, going back to like thinking of when I was in school, it's just like, okay, the biggest assignment that's like most important to whatever, you're in four courses, but there's one test that is coming up. That you need to prioritize that, but you don't want to, but it's the one thing that you should be doing, and then you can move on. And so I think you can just kind of apply that same logic in when you're an adult and you're trying to adult.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a thing, it almost is analogous to fitness, right? Which is most people, when it comes to working out, like to do the things they're already good at. And because you're comfortable. Yeah. Nobody likes to do what you're shitty at. Yeah. But by doing the things you suck at, because it's essentially low-hanging fruit, you actually make way more progress, because you're already good at something. So getting better at something you're good at is incremental gains. But you can do these giant progress at things you suck at. Totally. So it's developing that into just your life, not just working out. But it's one of those things where if you're already, good at writing, for instance, but speaking, talking, public presentations scare the shit out of you, well, by working on your writing some more is going to get you a little bit. But doing the thing that scares you, that you suck at, it doesn't take long to see some big improvements. And just like exercise, when you do these things over and over again, you run into the thing where it's almost like your brain, like how you stimulate your muscles and the fibers, basically respond and grow stronger. Mm-hmm. It's the same idea. Or for us climbers, our hands, they get calloused, right? As Catherine's fond of saying, because she's been like listening to David Goggins' book, you got to callous your mind. It's like, but it's a, skill that builds like within you. And for anybody, as far as like the fear thing, I think the biggest takeaway for people is the hardest part is just starting it.
Yeah.
Like anything you do, you get better at it, right? Mm-hmm. And then facing fear stops being a thing you're afraid of, and then it's like, oh well, I guess it's push-up day.
Yeah, totally. And I think just breaking your fear down into like micro things that you can do helps you, especially since I think what you're afraid of is doing it. Mm-hmm. Right? And anytime you try anything new, you are building new neural pathways in your brain to be like, oh, this is how I do that, or this is how I don't do that, and I'm going to remember that and try something else the next time. So yeah, I think like if you break down a move, it's like, okay, well, because we had moved already, the second time it was a lot easier. Yeah, you kind of get into the zone and you just break down into little bits and pieces. Or using a rock climbing analogy, you just know the route, and maybe you've only been able to climb up to this part. And so you do up to that part, and then you try that one extra hold, and then that worked or that didn't work, and you just break it down and keep trying like one little piece at a time. So I think too, that's helpful with COVID, and like, I think everyone's like mental state, like we don't have the capacity to think, like on a global scale and take on all the like challenges of like all these countries mingling. And then with our own country is so big. And then our province, and then the city, it's just like, we need to remember to like break down, like, what am I going to do today for just myself? And how can I get through today and not have to worry big picture? And hopefully your day is, safe and, doing things that you need to do. But I think we need to like break things down to like the micro level. And over time, I think it'll help the big picture, the macro level.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating too, like the mental health aspect of this pandemic, because on one hand,
it's a marathon. Sorry.
Well, definitely it is that, right? It's not like an acute crisis, right? Where it's like, like a car accident, it's going to be dealt with, within a couple of hours, right? Emergency responders, all that kind of thing. This is just, your odds of dying on any given day are very low, right? Of anything truly life-threatening. But it's this, both the unknown, which obviously causes its own stress, but then just the fact that it just keeps going and going, because you saw sort of in summer, people were like, we're wearing masks, but we're still out doing stuff.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, this is cool. The new normal, but we're, you could meet with people outdoors. You could, there were sort of different things. Right. So it was just like, oh, it's cool. And then fall comes, and then of course, sort of the second wave. And, I think part of the reason we've seen such a huge spike is people just got to the point they were fatigued, right? And just either let their guard down or just didn't give a shit anymore, right? It was like hanging out with people was more important than stopping the spread. And, it's kind of a fascinating thing that, unlike, say, a zombie apocalypse where we're all fighting for our lives, like this pandemic, for the most part, for most people, has been an internal struggle.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah. If you're an extrovert, I find it's like, it presents its own challenges, and introverts, from some of them that I've talked to, they're like, Yeah, I don't know. It's not it's not as challenging, but I'm not going to paint everyone with the same brush with that comment. But I had recently read an article on CNN, and it said that in just this month, in January of 2021, there was more deaths due to suicide in Japan than all COVID deaths in 2020.
Wow.
So that was just like an article that I read, and I was just like, that doesn't highlight the impact of mental health and it's and like kind of the ripple effect of, or yeah, the ripple effect, the secondary effects of COVID. Like that paints a really clear picture. And I haven't been to Japan. I don't know what it's like, but I mean, I think, I remember seeing a graph pretty early on in the first wave of COVID in BC, and there was, just like an X and a Y like graph, and there was like the amount of COVID deaths like over each month, and then it was compared to like overdosing from like different drugs, and that there was more basically, and but the media hadn't covered nowhere near the amount of coverage on those deaths as opposed to COVID. So yeah, people are very isolated, and it's a very challenging time, but you can't see it. It's invisible, and so it makes it that much more difficult. So
yeah, I have to say for us, like working out, and we've been really religious about it. It's pretty much every 2 days. But it's been really a godsend.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what else I think it would have definitely have affected me. I feel it a little bit, but I don't think it's not as much as it could be as far as the negative part of COVID and being where we're at, because I'm too tired.
Well, and actually one of the things that I think is kind of interesting too, though, is that we actually have a why.
Yeah.
Right. We've done episodes about it in our podcast, but there's like things that drive us, things that we're passionate about, things that are our tie into our values. And so it's one of those things when you actually have kind of a beacon that's guiding you, then it's just adapting your path around the obstacles in its way versus, if you'd been living a life in a sense almost on autopilot, and then it's entirely upended, and you have all this time, but there wasn't sort of a guiding beacon for you, then I think you end up with so much more, because you have so much more introspective time. You don't have the distractions, like if you're not going to work 40 or 50 hours a week, and you're not running to grab the kids, and you're not, well, now you actually have to stew with yourself. And what we're
asking, why am I doing all this?
Yeah.
For what? Right.
And I think one of the interesting things is that when, there's sort of the I didn't invent this, but the phrase, if you know your why, the how will take care of itself.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things of like, the people who have used this time, and sort of went, oh, what's actually important to me, right? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because they actually had the time to think about these things now. I think are in a position to come out of this with sort of more meaning. Because I think that's sort of the hard part that so many people have run into is, they were faced with the reality that they were going through motions, but they hadn't figured out what was meaningful to them. And it's almost like emerging from religion, or conspiracy theory thinking. When you emerge from that, because that was your worldview, now you've got to create a new worldview to take its place.
Yeah.
And you're kind of lost for a while.
Your perceptions are based off of influences. So how you look at things that you're fearful of, for example, Where's that coming from? Is that work, family, and are they your own, as you were saying earlier, right? And you need to let go of that. I guess that's why I keep focusing on meditating. It's good for you. Like, release everything and all those, and clean the slate when you confront a new opportunity or a challenge. Do your own research.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's the thing. How have you found your why, or how did you find your meaning that kind of drives you?
Yeah, I think, it's a great segue, because I know we were going to talk about vision, mission, and values and the importance of it. And I think the last place that I worked at in Winnipeg went through a big, there's a lot of structural change, but there was a lot of culture change, and there was a lot of work done on revising and updating and creating a new vision, mission, and values for the company. And having gone through that experience from a professional standpoint, going through work, that was great. I really enjoyed that. And then I just took that experience and just kind of applied it to my own life. And I went through creating my own company vision, mission, and values right before I got incorporated. I was like, step one, before I get incorporated and start taking on clients, I'm actually going to just spend a little bit of time and create my own company vision, mission, and values. And I thought it was important because I had spent enough time understanding why it's important at the last place that I worked at. And I thought, well, it's just me. The company is just me. I could kind of make my company vision, mission, and values, or it should be a direct reflection of my own personal company or my own personal vision, mission, and values. And so to go through that exercise was really good. And I'll share what my company / personal vision, mission, and values are. So this is for Douglas Marketing. It's to bring forth and share the best in companies. That's my vision. My mission is strategically share valuable and genuine content. And then my values are authenticity and transparency. So I have a vision of, like, any client that I take on is my vision is to bring forth the best and share the best of that company. And I think how that relates to me personally is anybody that I build relationships with. I think I have, an eye or a skill in being able to see the light or the positives in people. And I think I'm able to bring that out in people and then let others see what I see, sometimes without maybe not them knowing, or I don't know. Anyway, so that kind of is like my vision with my company, is I want to bring forth and share the best in these companies that I just feel like there's something there. They're not showing it. Maybe they don't know how. And then it's my goal to bring that out in them. And how I'm going to do that, the mission is how you're going to achieve the mission, is through strategically sharing valuable and genuine content. So I think that's like an important marketing angle to do that. But if I was to do that one-on-one with someone, it would be through the same thing, sharing genuine, and valuable content, and doing it in an authentic and transparent way. I think that all kind of flows together really nicely. And your vision, whether it's company vision, or if you want to go through an exercise of creating your own personal vision, should be something that's almost never attainable. It's always there, but once you reach it, there should be more. So if I share, one amazing quality of a company and I do that, that's great, but I'm not done. There should be more there that I should be able to try and pull out and share with one person. If I'm able to have a really great conversation and pull out some really good nuggets of whatever that somebody's going to get something from, great. But they probably have a lot more of those. And so you just like, it should always be kind of, once you reach it, there should always be something more that you're always trying. Like, it shouldn't just be to acquire X, and then once you've reached it, I don't know, it's the gold at the end of the rainbow. Because I think you got to have that aspect of, there's always something more. Using a climbing analogy, if you did do that climb and you reach like your peak, great. There's always another climb, and then go after that. So, I guess just like going through that exercise personally, really, it's just if you have a vision, like you said, like it's just a guiding star that just, you can kind of operate your day-to-day life and have a direction that you're kind of working towards. And it doesn't have to be crystal clear, but it can be like just a direction that kind of guides you. And like spending a little bit of time on values kind of helps you with how you want to get there. And then, your mission is just breaking down how you think you can best reach whatever your vision is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think basically that type of thing, I think, is what, if you want to think of like a silver lining to COVID, mm-hmm. is giving people, not everybody's introspective, right? Not everybody, like some people just want, and power to you, they sort of just want the simple, and, like somebody's watching The Bachelor. But, and all those shows. But fundamentally, you run into that thing where one of the problems of modern life is, for all the conveniences we have less free time, or perceptibly free time, because what would normally be free time is spent distracted with Facebook and Instagram, and like we're walking around with an entertainment unit in our pocket. So I think a lot of modern technology has inadvertently, or maybe on purpose, taken away like our introspective time.
Oh, totally. Right?
Because nobody just stands in a line and doodles in their head.
Yeah.
Doodle on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking Simon Sinek right there, about how, like, I don't know if you've heard of like his talk, but he's got a book,
but I don't know that one.
I haven't heard this one. Yeah.
He just talks about like, talking about like innovation, and like, we're always like glued to our phones, and just how, when you put technology away and you stand in line, for example, like if you just stand there and you're not on your phone, you just like kind of look around, like thoughts pop into your head, and like you have time to think. That introspective time just gets, more of it has just been consumed with technology.
That it's misguided. You've got the algorithm working against you.
Yeah, so you're getting ideas. They're just not your own.
They're not your own.
Right? Yeah. Because either way, we, like our brain, short of sleeping, and even in REM sleep, it's doodling ideas. So either you're getting the ideas from the outside, right? And enough of them that they become self-reinforcing, basically leads to sort of like the QAnon kind of nonsense, right? Where basically people are just getting enough, information, and you're in marketing, so the old marketing adage that somebody needs to see something X amount of times to start to earn some trust, and they only see it 1 out of 9 times you advertise, so you need to advertise higher volume, whether it's newspaper or radio ads or whatever, so that they're getting it repetitiously. Anything they see repetitiously, they're going to give more credibility to than something that they don't. that they only see once or what have you. So it comes into a thing where, because the algorithm feeds you stuff that you already are predisposed to, then you end up with this kind of feedback loop. And so you're seeing the same kind of nonsense over and over. So you believe the nonsense. The flip side, of course, is, because that's sort of an external stimulus. But if you take away those stimuluses, and I refer to it as the elves in the back of the shop, because when somebody goes, I have like this just popped into my head, or I have an intuition about something, right? What it is just the fact that, the elves in the back, they're doing all the work. And then they just sort of sent it out front to you going, like, it's almost like somebody handed you a slip of paper and, oh, okay, I have an idea. No, they did all the work. Yeah. And it's really a fascinating thing when you think about how much of it's your brain, it's attached in your body, but how much of the ideas and intuitions and gut instincts and all that kind of thing that are ours, we have no conscious control over.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's the first time it really hit home, that concept right now, how much of our subconscious is being informed because of mindless. How many times are you in the line? Because I know in the old days, we all be tapping our feet, like what the, like, let's hurry up, right? In the grocery line, where today it's like, oh, I'll just get my phone, and you're mindlessly looking, and are you really paying attention? You're not. It's almost like driving on autopilot, right? And what are you picking up? Garbage, really. And it takes away from your own intuition or creativity, independence to come up with your own thought.
Or what you were doing is you would start up a conversation with someone in mind. Right.
Yeah.
Now you have your earbuds in and your hoodie up. It's like, don't talk to me.
Yeah, like you would build a face-to-face, interaction with someone that might lead to, who knows, whatever type of relationship. But just that alone would just be like, I don't know, you're making a connection with someone that you're not swiping left or right or texting or messaging on social media.
Because it's those preconceived notions that are developed by our, work, environmental, social media paradigm, like all those paradigms, right? Like all those influences that determines whether or not you'll try new things. Like how you view the world.
What I wonder, and this is just sort of a thing that popped in my head. I wonder if especially for the younger people, where Instagram, which is like a curated perfect life most of the time.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder how many people are risk or failure averse, because, so many things that we're exposed to only show the good part of it.
Yeah. The successes, the wins.
You should do a hashtag movement for real life.
Like
just woke up real life.
Failure's cool.
No, but seriously, real life. The kids arguing, screaming.
Yeah, no, totally. You're absolutely right, Winston. Like, yeah, I think there is a lot of that. I just watched, there's a great ad that Dove did. So it's like a number of years ago. And I just found it on YouTube, and I just watched it, and I shared it with someone, and it's a time lapse, but it's a reverse time lapse of an ad. And I don't know if you remember, or some people might have seen this one, but basically there's a model, a female woman that just sits down in the chair. She just looks like a normal woman, and it's a time lapse of her sitting down, and she's got, like blemishes on her face, or, pimples. And anyways, the time lapse goes, and it's only like less than a minute, and there's all the makeup that's applied, then the hair is done, and then they take pictures, and then they elongate her neck, and then they take in her cheekbones, and then like make her eyes bigger, and then the end picture, and like a bunch of it is photoshopped and makeup, and then it zooms out, and then it's that picture, the finished product is on the billboard, and then it goes to a black screen and it says, no wonder our perception of beauty is distorted. And it's like, it's so true. And I think there's, you could apply kind of the similar thought around your perception of life, or people that are bloggers or whatever they're sharing on social media. It's like, you're only seeing, just remember that you're only seeing what they are deciding to share. And they're probably sharing, the good stuff. I think there's some really good influencers out there that are really transparent, and they do share a lot of like real stuff. Jillian Harris, I think, is one of them off the top of my head. But yeah, I think that you are probably inundated, or the younger generation is inundated with like a false perception of reality and what these people's lives are actually like.
Yeah, and I wonder too if because there's already been like studies done on this, that if your life is not what you want it to be, but you're seeing all of these curated travel and Lamborghinis and all the sort of bullshit you see on Instagram, then basically people end up with this sort of like negative feedback loop, because that's not me, I can't, well, that's not anybody, right? Or the number of people that actually can live that lifestyle, well, we got to work, and we got to this, and we got to that, and we're not either independently wealthy, or haven't reached a point where that's our business, because essentially they're a product at that point. And so we know that can affect people's sense of self-worth, right? Because it's kind of taking the keeping up with the Joneses virtual, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is like all external validation, right? You got the good job, you got the money, you got the car, all the things you quote unquote wanted. Like, it's almost like you have to achieve all of those things to realize, oh wait, I'm still feel shitty and broken, so I have to work on myself.
Yeah. Like the overarching theme that we're talking about is like happiness. And I think we're all trying to strive for that. And you kind of just reworded a great quote that Jim Carrey had, which is, I think he says something like, I wished everyone got everything they ever wanted, or became as wealthy and everything that they wished that they were, and then realized that it wasn't the answer. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom there. And I've been trying to break down happiness into a formula, or just look at certain things that will lead me to living a more fulfilling life, if you want to word it that way. And I think leaning into fear is one aspect of the formula, because you are doing something that is probably going to help you grow. And when you grow, I think there's endorphins that are released, and so you do feel happy. I think the more that you help others and you get out of your own head, I think that leads to, happiness, or you experience some sort of happiness, like that selflessness. And I think just not just equals happiness, but I think if you just do things that you are trusting your gut on, I think you'll live a more fulfilling life. And one thing that's helped me with that, and maybe will resonate with maybe a lot of men more so than women, I don't know, but maybe, is I watched this short video from Tim Ferriss. He's got his own podcast, author of 4-Hour Workweek and a number of other books, but he talks about like how to trust your intuition or gut. And it's like, if it's a full body yes, then do it. And what he means by that is he breaks it down to if it's a yes in your mind or your head, if it's a yes in your heart, and if it's a yes in your gut. And if there's two of three of those that are saying yes, don't do it. It's got to be like a full body yes. So
what do you do about dumb people that have like a full body yes for dumb things?
Well, maybe
I know a lot of those.
Yeah, maybe you're just gonna learn from something like that, and then it's
the problem is that they're dumb,
and then you
don't mistake. Like I know that's sort of one of the hard things.
You're gonna take an IQ test.
Yeah. That really is one of the things that it doesn't get talked about, and I'm sort of being flippant when I say dumb, but the fact is that there are people who make, like they have, in their head it makes sense, in their heart, oh yes, and in their gut or their balls or whatever, down below they're feeling, they go for it wholeheartedly. It's an abject failure, and then they do the exact same thing again. Like variation, but it's like it's sort of that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is like the definition of insanity. Well, based on that, there's a lot of insane people out there, right? Like there's a lot of what we're talking about, a lot of what you talk about on your podcast. It's about going on the adventure, which is sort of the unknown journey, right? Like that's what an adventure is. If you're doing something you know how to do exactly the same, and you're doing it over and over again, that's not really an adventure, even though it might be in an adventure field, right? And so when you have people, who whether listen to this or they go to some motivational seminar or all these different things, but there seems to be like some people have the capacity to, like learn from the mistakes. And it seems that there are people that intrinsically just, it's almost like they're in a video game, like they're non-playable characters because they're just going to behave the same every time they play it.
Saying.
But I think change is hard for them. I know some people like that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want what they know is comfortable, even though it is uncomfortable, and they're unhappy with it. But they can't get past either the self-work that they got to do, but it's usually something uncomfortable they're insecure about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think mindfulness is another like factor or thing, and just being as present as you can every day, I think is I don't know what that's like an ingredient in the soup of happiness is like mindfulness. I think if you can just be present, something that I've just learned not long ago, like an interesting tip that I'm going to be just more mindful of as I carry on my day is apparently if you pay attention to your tongue is connected to, I think it's the left side of your brain, and which is connected to like thoughts. And so if you're finding that your tongue, and I think for most people, it's usually on the roof of your mouth, and you can be maybe, I think when you're stressed, I think it's like up. And if you focus your attention on your tongue and try to relax like your jaw and then your tongue and let it like kind of slide like back like into the resting position of like your mouth, the more times that you're like relaxed, like more that, just stick it. I get silly. But I think actually if you are more mindful of the position of your tongue and trying to relax it, you will actually open up your mind to like new thoughts. And maybe like a similar trick to like,
I can think of a meme and a dirty meme. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Any thoughts can pop into your head.
Go on.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just something that I've thought of that I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe next time, I don't know, I'm watching TV or whatever, I'm just not in my head. If I want to get back to like being present, I'm just going to think, where is my tongue right now? Can I relax it more? And then maybe that will like open up some pathways to like new thoughts.
I wonder with that, whether it's specifically the tongue, or, you know, it'd be interesting to sort of do, you know, if there somebody smarter than me would have to come up with the study, but whether it's the actually having an intention, right? So in this case, you're focusing on your tongue, or if you focused on your breathing, or if you focused on, you know what I mean? Like it's taking you from, you know, worrying about the future, regretting your past, to focused on something now. I wonder if that part of it is what is the catalyst. So whether it's, you know, it'd be an interesting thing because I find whether it's breathing, the tongue thing's new to me, you know, whether it's like intently focusing on a skill, physical, you know, whatever it happens to be, and being, when you're doing something with intention, it makes you pay attention to it, which means you're present. And I wonder if that's one of those things where if you're too much of your brain is thinking about the past and the future, you're not thinking about now.
That's right.
And, you know, so yeah, it's just an interesting, like, I wonder if it's just the act of doing anything with intention that actually accomplishes that.
Maybe.
Totally. But like, yeah, you can focus on like your breath, or, I mean, you could intentionally just like make a fist and close it and just focus on that for like a minute and probably be present. And there would be something to that too, probably.
I think there's definitely something to be said about not multitasking and just downtime from other sources of information, which actually today's chat made me realize the need to do more of.
Yeah.
Well, because
multitasking, I've always referred to it as it's how you do a whole bunch of things shittily.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you truly do. Yeah.
Because if it like focus on, you know, what you're doing, you know, and segment your day so you can get a bunch of things done in the day. Like, you know, block your day off so that you have time periods for each thing, set a timer, you know, there's a bunch of tricks to it. But the idea of trying to do a bunch of things at once, you're never going to do anything well. Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when they refer to multitasking, nobody explains what it is. And really what we're talking about is sort of some sort of time management throughout your day. So it's not that you're trying to do a bunch of things at once. It's just you're getting a bunch of things done in the day. You know.
Yeah, like I was listening to a podcast while grocery shopping yesterday, right? It's a dead time, like you said. And I know if I did not listen to the podcast and I just went grocery shopping, I probably would have completed grocery shopping in a shorter amount of time, because I'm listening and I'm getting distracted because I'm paying attention to that. But then I'm looking for where's the oranges, and like, it's not as effective, I think, like, yeah. So, but you can fill those time, and I'm okay to make that sacrifice because I do get some enjoyment out of doing those two things at the same time.
With this past year of COVID, what have been some of the most beautiful moments that have happened this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on a professional level, I've always known that part of the time I can do my job remotely and I don't physically have to be in the office. And I've been like trying to convince past employers that, like, what I'm trying to say is there's a balance and I don't have to be here all the time, and the work output will not change. In fact, it'll probably be maybe even like better. And so I think having COVID has opened everyone's minds. And I think in the future, if I went back to work, it would be a lot easier to try and pitch that and actually achieve what I'm trying to achieve, which is more of truly a work-life balance. So I find that I think that will not be as much of an uphill battle for a lot of people, because I think COVID I don't know what else would have caused our society to hit pause and actually slow us down. And yes, there's been a lot of negative side effects with that, but there is a lot of silver linings with it. And I think hopefully more people on the whole will live a more like work-life balanced life, like especially in bigger cities where you're spending so much time in your week commuting. If you cut that down even by one day, you're going to save a lot of time. You're going to have more time with family or doing other things that you now have time to do. So I think that has been, a net positive for society, and me included. Beautiful things that have happened this year, other things. I don't know. I look at like the calendar year and it's just like a roller coaster. It was just like, there was like months of like, yeah, this is great. Oh, I love it. Oh, and then next month it was just like, how long is this going to last? This is exhausting. I am getting Zoom fatigue and FaceTime fatigue. And like, so to try and pinpoint the like really high times. I mean, being in a new place, I was exposed to like a lot of new like outdoor nature. And like, I think that Japanese have a term like taking a forest bath when you're like just walking through the trees. And like out here, we're surrounded by huge like ponderosa pines and just like beautiful trees, and being out in nature has been definitely a highlight. The golden highlight of the year has been my wife and I are expecting, and we're due any week now, and that is consuming the most of my headspace, and I'm just like overjoyed and absolutely thrilled. I've been just like a puddle of like emotions lately because I'm just like, I'm so excited. So I mean, that's definitely the highlight. But I think there's been just a lot of beautiful moments of just being here, just being like having my breath taken away by like the nature, the beauty. Like BC is truly spectacular, and you can just like go on a hike and, put your back next to a tree and just take it all in. And it's not hard to do, to just be enveloped by the beauty of nature. So I think there's been so many moments of that out here that I'm like really, I soaked it in. But then I also have this guilt of like, oh, I know how hard it is for so many people too. Can I allow myself to like enjoy this pristine place? So it's been like an inward struggle as well.
And then with your podcast this year, and you launched it this year, isn't that true?
No, I actually launched it in, I think it was December of 2018. But yeah, no, this year with the podcast has been great.
What's been some of your most favorite episodes?
I just had a really good one that I just launched with her name's Sarah Bulford, and she lives in Squamish, BC, and she is, I think, just lives this amazing outdoor BC lifestyle. But I came across her because I read an article called Why I Quit My Dream Job, and it just sounded something like, oh, that's different. And so she worked towards and attained becoming a park ranger at a BC national park, and finally did it, and then shared her experience over the years of the toll that job had on her, and just her relationship with nature and how that's changed. And that was really interesting from me being like a prairie boy moving to the mountains and being so in awe of nature. And I truly just appreciate it. But then seeing the effects of over tourism and funding cuts to BC national parks and just like a misallocation of resources. And it's just kind of painting a really bad, sad reality picture of, we got to change how we're taking care and living with our environment, because we're we're not doing the big things that I think need to be done. And just, there's a lack of education, people going into the wild. You guys probably speak to this, just like, from like feeding animals to not picking up your trash to just like not having that education to the education of being out in nature and living with nature and not destroying it. And so that episode was really eye-opening and educational for me. And I think a lot of other people will probably get a lot from that episode. The bad answer is all of them. That's such a terrible answer, but like,
actually this year we were going past
looking back at the year,
looking what we did, right? And we actually I felt a little bit down. I was just a little bit
you lost your mojo.
I did. But when I looked back at everything, that all those stories we did, I'm like, that was a good story. That was this year. It felt like it was last year, right? Because sometimes you wonder, what did we do this year? Because we didn't have the same personal interactions as we normally do.
Yeah, because one of the things we'll do is like we'll travel places, take the kit with us, and interview people. We did Cody Bradford in his van down in Vegas, and we'll talk to a ranger down in the Adirondack Mountains when we were down there. So it's kind of like mixing the adventures with the people in their environment and everything. And obviously we weren't able to do much of that this year.
It was tough.
But yeah, it ended up being an interesting, like, I'm proud of the body of work we did in 2020.
Yeah. So I think that's a good sign, because sometimes
I'm just enjoying all the conversations that I have. And
for listeners to hear more, tell us more about the Dean Douglas Show.
Oh, sure. So basically it's been traditionally like a longer format podcast, usually anywhere from maybe on the short end, like an hour. And then on the long end, there's a couple episodes that are over 3 hours. So I got started because I was originally inspired by the Joe Rogan podcast and the Tim Ferriss podcast. I love listening to those conversations, and I saw how much fun they were having. And I really liked not just the guests that they had on, but I liked learning more about the host. And I thought, I think this would be really great. I was kind of craving having more meaningful connections and relationships. I had like experienced kind of like a falling out of like my core group of friends growing up over the last, I don't know, like maybe like 5 or so years. And so I was just missing like having more meaningful relationships and conversations. I was really craving like conversations that had some substance personally. And so I thought podcasting was great. I'm like, oh man, and longer format. You had 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 conversation that was, generally like uninterrupted, and you could really go down rabbit holes and talk about all different things, not just like kind of peel away layers of different topics with different people. And so I thought this is a great platform to be able to do that. I want to do this. And so I bought a Blue Yeti microphone on Amazon for like $100. And then I just asked some friends at the beginning, friends that I wanted to develop like a little bit more deeper relationships with and get to know them a little bit more, asked if they wanted to be on a podcast. Podcasting was becoming cool. So I don't think I've ever had anyone say no to a podcast. I think people have, because they're like, oh, I don't know if I'd be interesting enough or whatever. And I'm just like, no, like it's my job to like, going back to my vision, like pull out the best and like share, them with the world. So it was just a great platform to be able to do that. And then I just get to learn a lot about other people and many different topics. So I guess it long and short is each episode is very different. And it's just me getting to know the guest a little bit better and then diving into various different topics.
Nice.
Yeah. So if people want to find your podcast,
www.deandouglasshow.com. And you can just search Dean Douglas on any podcast platform and it'll pop up. And you can connect with me on Instagram at Dean Douglas Show. And that's pretty much it.
Well, right. Well, thank you for being on with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. It was a good chat.
I have a bit here of a summary of what I think guides you, and you talked a bit about fear and trust your gut and mindfulness. So it's an important topic. I mean, people are trying to figure out how to navigate these days, and big whys are coming up. So a little time for introspection, get away from the Googles.
Yeah, the programming. Would it actually, like, basically the fact that we're so influenced by that type of thing just proves how dumb we all are. It's basically our brain is a computer and somebody's just figured out a way to hack it.
Oh yeah, totally.
Totally. So now we just need to like be those cool hackers in the movies and like hack it back.
Or just turn
on. Well, no, but you still want to be in control of it, don't you?
Yeah.
So if that's the only thing anybody takes away from this episode, social media is computer hacking your brain, and you can be like a white hat hacker and hack your brain back.
I feel like we need a meme.
I'm just saying. If we're going to sum things up for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is great. Thanks so much, you guys. Really appreciate you having me on the podcast.
And do you think we're going to get the sign off correct?
Work hard.
Play dirty. Because we fuck it up every time. So
work hard, play dirty.